Hello everyone, welcome to Challenge to Build. My name is Paul Michael, and in today's episode we are going to continue the work on the 1959 Chevy Viking pickup truck bed, which we are making dump. In today's episode we are going to work on cutting out the wheel arch, installing the inner wheelhouse, and also going to continue work on installing the framework of the actual bed. So without any more waiting, it is time for me to challenge the build. So since the last episode, last week, I did spend some time and work on the truck, preparing for today's video. 79 3/4. I had gotten the order for my inner wheelhouses and started working on the process that you are watching right now. I did install the inner wheelhouse on the driver's side. I can honestly say that I jumped the gun on installing the wheelhouse because I did not have the inner structure put into the bed first. And the reason that I did not have it in before I put the inner wheelhouse in was because I did not have the materials for the job. Now that I have the materials for the job, I'm not going to make the same mistake that I did on the driver's side. It is very important to have the inner structure in first, then do your sheet metal to it. Although it is in and looks good, it could have been better. So with putting that in over the weekend, I was able to learn what not to do on this side. So hopefully I will be able to show you a little bit more smoother of a process and ultimately a better product in the end. And the first thing that we are doing is I'm going to cut the angle iron. I'm using 1.5 inch angle with an 1/8 wall thickness or gauge to add the support needed for inside the bed, which ultimately will have the wood and steel laying on it. So what I'm going to do now, So what I am going to do now is start cutting the pieces for the inner frame, get these tack welded and installed into the bed. And then we're going to move on to cutting out the wheel arch and then also trimming the wheelhouse. So I hope you enjoy the episode. I'm going to get to work. After I turn my electric on. Let's try that again. Like a glove. So that's the first piece. I'm going to go ahead and clamp that in there. We're going to build off of this. So I don't know if you remember or not, but this is where back in part 2 of this bed build, when we actually put the box together, this is where building it square really comes into play, because now I can measure off of certain points, knowing that the box frame is square. So if I measure over here, I can replicate and mirror the measurement over there and then build exactly what is over here on that side. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to take a couple measurements, transfer the marks over there, and then cut my pieces and continue the process that I did over here, over that side. And then similar to doing 2x4 framing, you want to make your mark and then put an X on the side that you want your piece on. And then repeat the same process for the back. And I'm going to continue measuring from the front to the back rather than transferring from the back to the front. I'm going to make sure that all of my measurements come from the same area on the bed. I am measuring from the 1.5-inch angle that's up on the front to the marks that I need on the back. So now I'm at 57 5/8. 57 5/8. Double check. What do they say? Measure twice, cut once. This will be measure twice, weld once. So now that I've transferred all the marks, I'm going to measure for my last piece in between, and 38 3/4. That's a happy number because that's what number I have written down over there as far as the piece that goes from the aft brace to the forward brace. So now I have all of the measurements I need. I'm going to finish cutting the pieces I need and then get everything cleaned up and welded in, and then move on to cutting out the inner wheelhouse. So now that I have all the pieces cut and cleaned up, it's just a matter of reassembling the bed. First with that piece, I have the forward and aft cross sections. What you can see is the way that I'm building this is I am notching the pieces out, so that way everything fits kind of like a puzzle. The notch fits down inside the channel. This way here it gives me full weld across the top, the bottom, and along the sides, and give me the strength that I need to hold this thing together. And it's just a matter of making sure you put the pieces in the right order. These little magnet clamps from Harbor Freight really come in handy, holding everything together. I want to get everything temped in. Come back with the square and get it squared up as I weld it together. I have to make sure I didn't weld it to the frame. Nice fit. Measure twice, weld once. So the last thing I'm going to do is put an angle support or an angle brace from the bottom edge of the bed up to the main frame up here. There it is. This way here, it gives it the rigidity that it needs this way. That's happy, happy, happy. Let's see if I can get a weld on it. Bingo. Get this thing welded in and move on to the next step. So now that I have the inner framework welded in, I can go ahead and start with the modification of the inner wheelhouse. The inner wheelhouse, I need to trim about 4 inches off the height. And then I'm also going to need to trim approximately 3 inches off of the width. In the beginning of the video, you heard me talking about jumping the gun and getting ahead of myself on the installation of the wheelhouse. And the reason that that is because putting the inner wheelhouse in without any of these cross bracing in, once I cut the inner wheelhouse out of the bedside, it distorted this frame rail and it didn't give me any kind of point of reference to actually install the wheelhouse into. This is ultimately the best way to install it, in my opinion, only because had I done it this way, I would have been able to leave my wheelhouse longer and actually slip it down inside this edge and have a nice surface to weld to all the way down this edge. But instead, because none of this was here, I had to put my wheelhouse in and then butt weld everything to this edge because I had put these cross bracings in afterwards. So a lot more time and effort on my part welding in the wheelhouse. Had I just waited and put the inner framework in, I could have easily just slipped down the inner wheelhouse down inside this lip and then had a much cleaner edge with a lot less effort as far as putting it together. Unfortunately, for my sake, I like symmetry. So even though I have the opportunity to do it this way or that way on this side, I'm actually still going to complete this side the same way that I did that side, but it still will be easier because now I will have, like I said earlier, a point of reference to be able to work to. So I won't have to fight it as much on that side. I'll be able to rest it and clamp it in here with a nice tight seam for the butt weld, and then also be able to work in the edge once I get this cut out. So that's what's going to happen. I'm going to get the measurements made for the wheelhouse, trim the wheelhouse to fit, set it in place, and then use it as the template to cut out the bedside. I did make one measurement down off of the top edge at about 1.25 inches, the same as the driver's side. So that way I can use that as reference for the height. And then once in place, trace it and then cut it out and then install the wheelhouse. So that's what's happening. A little piece of advice: if you choose to use masking tape as a way to strike your lines, make sure you are paying attention to the width of the tape you are using. So I already started this process. I ran out, so I'm using a different kind. But it's just a matter of starting in at the bottom, running straight lines in and around. For the radius, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the bottom edge on the radius because the top edge will not go around it. And one thing I'm going to do is just take a rough measurement from the framework up, there's like a ledge or a lip that's rolled into this fender. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reference that crease line to the one edge and just kind of get an idea and see where that is in relation to the one that I have over there. Very close to the measurement that I need, so I'm happy with that. Obviously, you always want to kind of double check yourself, triple check yourself, because if you make a mistake on this part, you're either going to have to do a lot of extra welding to repair it, or buy yourself a new piece of sheet metal, and we don't want to do either one of those. So I'm happy with what I got. I'm going to go ahead and cut out my first line, and then once I get this cut, I'm going to place it up there, double check everything, and then decide what the next step is going to be. I'm either going to cut the 3 inches out of this, or I might actually trace it first and cut the bed, because I have an idea when it comes to installing this that might make it a little bit easier for me. So I'm at least going to cut this out, and then we'll put it on the truck. One thing I want to make mention to real quick before I go ahead and start cutting this is safety gear. Make sure you're using gloves, face shield, safety glasses, or both. Also, a good thing to have around are these little foam earplugs for cutting sheet metal and working in the garage. It can get awfully loud, so putting the foam earplugs in, I've noticed, definitely helps protect my ears, and I would want you to do the same as well. This has got taper in it. 3 inches, going to pull it in, drop it down. So after looking at the inner wheelhouse for a little bit and the placement, I am going to go ahead and cut it to width as well. So I'm going to buzz out the 3-inch line that I need here, because the way that it looks is these have some taper in them and flare down. So if I cut the proper width in the inner wheelhouse, that should drop it down to where my mark is here without messing me up too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and take the width out of this and test it one more time. So now, in order to make my 3-inch line, I'm going to use a framing square and just like tracing a line for some plywood. As long as the framing square has the measurement, hold my marker on 3 inches and simply just drag the framing square down along the edge, holding it square, holding the marker on 3 inches, dragging it down and around until you complete the line. And on these cuts specifically, I am trying to leave the marker line. So obviously you always want to cut the piece too big and always trim down. If you always come in and cut the line or cut over the line, cut it smaller, cutting it smaller is either going to ruin the piece, or like I said, it's just going to make your job that much harder. So I'm going to go ahead and finish tracing this line and get this cut out. And just as I suspected, once I cut that 3-inch width out on the factory flange, it shrunk down the inner wheelhouse even that much farther. And now I can see my line where I need my reference. So now it's just a matter of making sure that it's center, left to right, tracing my line, and then we'll get involved in actually cutting out the bedside. turning back now. Gotta trim that corner out right there. Take the flap disc and radius that little bit from the flare. And I have a feeling it will go right in. Good. Feeling pretty confident, so I spent the time cleaning up the inner fender or the inner wheelhouse. A little persuasion, a little finesse. I definitely should have had the inner braces in first. I'll be able to push this in a little bit. I'll tack this side, get my measurements set. Be able to measure from the inside bed edge, put the square up, and get the same kind of measurement. Yeah, I'm liking that. Anything on the excess side over here, I can trim up and grind down after I get it welded. A couple measurements and get this thing tacked into place. So there you have it. The wheelhouse is now tack welded into position, and this side definitely went a lot more smoothly than the driver's side. It was definitely a key factor in having the inner framework in first. I knew that going into doing the driver's side, but obviously I was impatient and I wanted to do some work to the truck, so I paid the price on that side. This side definitely is the way to do it. There are a couple other options as far as putting the wheel well in that I probably would have done had I just been patient and did that side, like this side. But overall, I am very satisfied and pleased with the way it looks. I was able to get it in. I took a couple measurements using a square, tape measure front to back, squared it up, got all my marks right, was very happy with the way it looked. Tack welded it into position, and now all I have left to do is continue the spot welding process in and around the sheet metal, working 6 to 10 inches apart from each other, bottom, sides, and bedside. So I am running out of memory card on my camera, so this is where we are going to end today's video. I have quite a bit of work left as far as just welding and grinding is concerned, so I'll run some of that footage in the upcoming video in the next week or so that way you can see what it was involved in doing that. If you want to support Challenge to Build any more than just watching on YouTube, there is a link in the description below. Go ahead and click the link. That link will send you over directly to eBay and my eBay store, Challenge to Build. Anything that is purchased from that store directly supports this build and the future of Challenge to Build. So I thank you for taking the time and checking that out as well. For the upcoming episode of Challenge to Build, I think we are going to focus on actually building the Gooseneck Hitch for this truck. So that way, once that's installed, I can then finish the cross bracing inside the bed. We are probably 50%, halfway through the build for this bed. I ordered the hydraulic rams for the hydraulic tilt mechanism. We still have to finish the side radius profile and then also finish the filler piece up at the cab. So we still have a ways to go, but very happy with the progress overall and the way that it looks with the overall style of it. It's coming together very nicely. So with that, my name is Paul Michael. This has been Challenge to Build. Now I want you to get up and go challenge your build. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.